Yeah, I think so. I think so. Well, welcome to the June regular meeting of our town council, and if you would, let's stand for the invocation.
Okay.
And David Phillips, Dr. David Phillips, pastor, First Baptist Church of Black Mountain.
Let's pray together. God of grace and God of glory, we thank you for the gift of this day. We thank you for each member of council, for town leadership, for their families. And we pray, Lord, your richest blessings on them. We pray tonight for the meeting, for the items on the agenda. We pray, Lord, that you would grant wisdom and guidance, that it would bring you joy and progress for the citizens of Black Mountain. Thank you for this honor and joy to live in this place at this time, and bless this meeting. We pray in the name of Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, David. Good to see you. And our Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. Thank you. I just have a couple of announcements. The first is just to remind all our citizens who might be watching and those present that the fireworks will be held this year. And July the 4th being Sunday, there will be Saturday, July the 3rd. That is correct, isn't it, Josh? Saturday, July the 3rd.
Yes, sir.
Fireworks when it gets dark, when darkness comes. And one other announcement, very pleasant one. Many of us in the room know the Begley family, and Ruby Begley's been a good friend of mine for a long time, and on the 17th, she turns 100. So congratulations to her, and I wonder, Savannah, if we could do a little proclamation for Ruby next month. That'd be great. I wish I'd caught it this month. I knew it was happening, and it occurred to me today, but still, if you think about it, if you know Ruby, she'd appreciate a card, I know, and as we know, she's still going strong, I think, at almost 100. And it's also my pleasure today we have a proclamation because our council member Tim Raines is resigning as of the end of this meeting. And Tim, it's just been our pleasure to have you with us. I've got a proclamation here that we wanted to read. Whereas the town of Black Mountain is always appreciative of those who serve for the betterment of the town. Whereas Tim Raines has dedicated 3 years of service to the town of Black Mountain as council member. Whereas Tim Raines rendered during his term of office valuable services to the town of Black Mountain and the citizens thereof. And whereas it is fitting that the town of Black Mountain shows its appreciation when one has rendered such valuable services. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the mayor and town council of the town of Black Mountain that Tim Raines is hereby acknowledged as having been a good, loyal, and faithful public servant of the town of Black Mountain. That this proclamation expresses the deep appreciation on behalf of the citizens of the town of Black Mountain for the valuable service which he has provided the town. That this proclamation is hereby presented to Tim Raines, and a copy of the same shall be placed within the records of the town. Proclaimed this 14th day of June, 2021, Larry B. Harris, Mayor. And Tim, it's just our very best to you and your future move. We know you're going to be here for the warm months of in the mountains anyway.
Hopefully.
That's right. And we'll all get Tim's address and go see him when it gets cold up here.
Good.
Would you like to say anything, Tim?
Mr. Mayor, Josh, council, I just want to thank everybody for this great honor that I've had. And it's not an easy decision to leave, but I enjoyed my time on the board, and I thank everybody.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much. And bow tie really looks good on you too, I might. This is Tim's copy?
Yes.
Here you go. Thank you, brother. All right. Any citizen comments?
I do have a couple I would like to read at this time. Both of these being about the library. First from Connie Pruitt. Please take this to council meeting when the issue of the Black Mountain Library is discussed. I'm very opposed to the library being closed. There are way too many seniors and others without transportation who depend on the close proximity of our library. It would be a real injustice to close it. And secondly, Tina Rosado, 108 South Park Lane. I just heard that the county is considering consolidating the Black Mountain and Swannanoa libraries. Please do not support this. A library isn't just a building with books inside. A library is a community center, a place of focus for each community. Building a new library midway between Swannanoa and Black Mountain wouldn't represent either community. If Buncombe County has money to spare, surely they can find a more essential need on which to spend it. Thank you for hearing your constituents' opinions on this issue. Thank you for heeding their wishes.
Great, thank you, Josh. Thank you, and I'd just take a moment to add that the county commissioners they're not planning on closing the library in Black Mountain. They're just continue studying the plan that was given them by the consultant, and they were very gracious, came out and met with council member King and myself and Ron, our town attorney, who serves as the chair. Are you the chair of the library board? But a member of the library board. And the commissioners that they hadn't really even reviewed the plan themselves before it got out in the public, and so that's not going to happen, and it will just not going to happen anytime soon anyway, according to the commissioners. And so hopefully those who have not gotten that news through any channel, if you're listening, you'll know, but I suspect you'll see it in the local news sometime soon. And with that, Josh, how about the consent agenda?
All right, 5A, adoption of minutes. This is your May 10th, 2021 regular session minutes, the May 6th, 2021 agenda minutes, the May 13th, 2021 special called meeting minutes, May 20th, 2021 special called meeting minutes, and May 27th, 2021 special called meeting minutes. Item 5B is a call for public hearing for text amendments to add conditional zoning to the town's land use code. That will be July 12th for the public hearing. 5C is a call for public hearing to close a portion of unopened platted portion of right-of-way parallel in between West College Street and Goldmont Street on the southern end. That would be an August 9th public hearing date. 5D is an adoption of the adoption of the Buncombe Madison Hazard Mitigation Plan. 5E is to appropriate budgeted funds from contingency. 5F is the consideration of revisions to the town's purchasing and uniform guidance policies. 5G, budget amendment to recognize COVID-19 relief funds received from the county and budget additional funds in expense lines used to pay for approved COVID-19 expenses. 5H is a budget amendment to approve proceeds from the sale of property at 2992 Highway 70 to pay down the debt principal. 5I, budget amendment to transfer funds from the fire department special revenue fund to purchase fitness equipment for the fire station. It was actually fire station 1 and 2, both. 5J, budget amendment to transfer funds from police department forfeiture treasury fund, balance the purchase of 2 police vehicles. Lastly, K is a resolution to accept the American Rescue Plan funds, which will be resolution 21-10.
Josh, would you mind just expanding on a little bit for the public?
Absolutely. So we currently have an internal purchasing policy that's been in place for, I think, about 3 years roughly. This update to this policy will include some things such as electronic transactions that we need to be accounting for appropriately, as well as some separation of duties topics that were brought to our attention from our auditor at our last audit.
Right. And then also I, just to expand on just a little bit so folks know what that is.
So yeah, this money was some donation money that the fire department received, and we now have a special revenue fund set up for the fire department where we put in really specifically the East Buncombe Fire District taxes and other things like that, the sales tax from East Buncombe Fire District, and that was used to purchase, I think, about $10,000 or $15,000 worth of equipment, about $10,000.
Great, thank you. Any questions from any council members? If not, I'd entertain a motion to pass the consent agenda.
So moved.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. And we will start our roll call tonight with Councilmember King.
I vote aye. Pam King, aye. I forgot how to do
That's what we all
it.
did.
You moved me over here and I can't remember how to do it.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Thank you very much. Any citizen comments at this point in time, Josh?
No, sir.
Very good. And so we are on unfinished business, the River Walk Greenway update.
So I've got a few things just to kind of bring you up to speed on as far as our attempts at contacting some property owners that are adjacent to the Hempville property as well as the railroad, Norfolk Southern Railroad. So we have found out the Hemphill Road is only a public road up unto the railroad crossing. After that, it is an easement that the town has to access its water tank. So that is an easement that is specific as to what it can be used for, and it is not to be used for public access. That is only for the town's access to that water tank. We've sent letters to the property owner, which is Black Mountain Ventures. I know our planning director has sent multiple letters. Our town attorney has sent a letter, I think, as well, if more, maybe not more than one.
Yes,
one. And we've not had any response from the property owner at this time. Let's see. So the easement that is in place right now through Norfolk Southern is held by Black Mountain Ventures. So they have that easement to cross the railroad. If that easement is deleted, or if they get out of the easement, it automatically reverts back to the railroad, which in turn they would have to grant us access or grant us an easement to use that for public crossing. We've requested information about the crossing related to the private easement, but we have not gotten any information as far as that goes yet. We've also requested information about needing the railroad's right-of-way, and this kind of came out of one of those designs that was presented. One of those designs, at least preliminary design, was potentially to use some of those parking spaces on Sutton Avenue for some greenway through there. We have not heard back from Norfolk Southern on that aspect. We do currently lease those spaces now. Those are in the railroad right away. And then lastly, we requested some information about the coordination and improvements to the existing 8-grade crossing at NC9 and Sutton, right there where the major intersection is, kind of coming into town with the railroad crosses where Henson's is, but we have not gotten any response from the railroad on that yet either. So that's really the only update I have. I know it's not a lot of information, but this is where we are right now. So we're still attempting to get information from the railroad, and I just don't have a timeline on when that's gonna happen.
Right. What does, is there any sense from council as to how we want to move forward here? And this could, I'm a little concerned that we're not going anywhere. We're not going to get anywhere with that, with the trying to go through the Hemphill property and take that route. I think we could just take 2 or 3 or 4 years and not be anywhere. I think that's the risk. So, I am wondering, and we'll leave the Riverwalk Greenway under unfinished business and carry it over into July. But I wonder if it's not time to move forward and go with the alternate route that we have talked about. And in order to come to grips with that at July, will our Greenway commission be meeting before we meet?
They will meet
And
again this month here
They'll
soon.
meet this month. They'll meet tomorrow.
Okay.
So, I with that in mind, I think if it's the consensus of council, we're feeling like it's. I think council's feeling like it's time to move forward, and that we may maybe make a decision about that at the July meeting. It's up to council, but that certainly seems to be the consensus, because we could. I'm just concerned we could lose too much time. It's too unknown. And even if it is known, the cost of going that way could really not be a practical solution, I'm afraid. Would you like to add something? Please, go ahead.
And Ron might be able to speak to this too, but the nature of the easement on the other side of Hemp Hill Road is explicit to the private access to landlocked property owners, NCDOT's access to I-40 controlled right away, and the town's water towers. And it literally says in it is not to be interpreted for public use.
So we can't even use it, you're
No.
saying? Okay, well, that,
Not as it stands
Not-
for a public access.
Right.
not as it stands,
that,
not as
yeah.
it stands. What action would have to be taken to, I mean, if,
We would have to get public access easement from Black Mountain Ventures, right?
Well, yeah, we want the railroad to give us right across that crossing and get across the Black Mountain Ventures property to get back down, I guess, behind Bilo's. And we're not getting a response from any of those. parties.
nobody's even speaking to us.
Yeah, the railroad provided a copy of the agreement that they have with Black Mountain Ventures, and it, I'm told it would be very similar for the town, and we would be required, if we had a crossing there, we would be required to maintain it, free of vegetation, and keep it signed, and we'd have to make improvements, obviously, for
Right.
public safety, but you also assume any liability for injuries or death that occur from a train that you
Right.
can't involve, and so I think that there are some big question marks in what that agreement
Right.
would put the town on the hook for, that we don't really know right now. But I think that the biggest challenge really is there is a very specific use for the existing easement.
Right, yeah, it certainly. Well, let me ask this, council and Jessica. What do we need to have in front of council in July if council wants to make a decision on going with the alternate route?
I'm happy for the Greenways Commission to discuss this at their meeting tomorrow. But also to have just a very high level sketch of this route would go this way, and this is what the implications of it would mean as far as time, money, and order of operations.
Right.
And then what the alternate, there's two routes through town
Right.
we could consider,
Right.
two kind of schemas to fall into.
Right. Yeah,
And-
council's reviewed those, I mean, in some,
Yes,
some
they're no
level. That's
surprises. They are things that
Right.
have been covered, but you
Right.
could look at those as, as one, side by side
Right.
with having eliminated other options.
And if council did make that decision and voted to move forward with one of the alternate routes at the July meeting, would that would authorize the engineer to go ahead and commence work on that? Because right now they don't know they've been kind of working a little bit with this alternate Hemp Hill route, but really to come back and focus on this one and complete the engineering on it. Would that be
That's
the
right.
next step?
There are some administrative steps in the in-between.
Uh-huh.
Because we had a contract for a specific alignment prior with a specific scope of work, I have some paperwork with DOT to sort of put that to bed
Right,
and start new on whatever the next
Right.
section is. So there will be, because we have two sections now of the project, we will
Right.
have two agreements between NCDOT and two agreements with our engineering
Right.
group to manage each section separately.
right. Okay, great. Any comments, councilman, questions?
I think that's a really good idea, and I appreciate you moving that forward.
Good, well, thank you. Good, thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome.
Josh, it sounds like we'd still be waiting on the railroad for information about the crossing around at Henson's. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we have access to cross. I think what we're waiting on from them is just kind of some design specifics, maybe what they want to see there as folks cross that railroad crossing.
Which would actually be a different group we would interact with specifically when you start submitting things for them to review.
Got it.
And we have rail guidance with our engineering folks.
Would you mind also giving an update on the other section that leads to the Oaks?
So, at that section, I think we're still we're firming up everything with the MPO. We went through that process, and I think we've still got to dot a couple of I's and cross a couple of T's with them. That process has been started, but we've got to get clearance before we can start moving forward with that one, which should be soon.
Okay. We are now on to new business. Our first item of new business is a planning board appointment, and the board adopted a new procedure for handling our appointments to all our boards. And we are going to do it for the first time tonight, and our town clerk's going to lead us through this. We have two people who have submitted their applications. They have met with the planning board. And Savannah, I'll let you just take that away. Maybe just introduce the two names and then move forward with the voting process.
So our two applicants for this particular vacancy are Joe Loudenslayer and Sean Sloan. And the planning board recently reviewed these applications and have made a recommendation. They voted 5-1 to recommend Sean Sloan for appointment. And this is an unexpired vacancy, so it will be up for appointment again in 2022.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and you all have ballots at your seats. So whenever you're ready, you can just check whose name you'd like. I'll come around and pick them up, read them into public record, and then the mayor will ask for a motion.
Thank you, Savannah.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Pam King votes for Sean Sloan. Vice Mayor Ryan Stone also votes for Sean Sloan. Councilmember Raines for Sean Sloan. Councilmember Doug Hay for Sean Sloan. And Councilmember Archie Tiller for Sean Sloan.
Great, very good. Thank you, Savannah. So council, I'd entertain a motion that Sean Sloan be appointed to fill an unexpired term ending June 30th, 2022, and it's by a vote of 5-4 and 0 against. Thank you. Councilmember Patillo, thank you very much. And Councilmember King.
Pam King, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Thank you. Fire Protection Ambulance and Rescue Service Agreement, Josh.
This is actually, I will defer to Attorney Steve.
Oh,
If you would like to give an update on that. Or I can
Right.
I can do
go
it.
for it.
This is, and you already have an agreement in place where we get the funds from the East Buncombe Fire District based on a portion of the property taxes and the contract. We take that money, we provide fire services to the fire district, certain emergency services to the fire district to back up for medical response and emergency response and rescue. But this is not a big change in your agreement that's last entered into, it's just carrying it forward. So if we get the money, we're agreeing to provide the services.
You got any questions for the town attorney? And if not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the Fire Protection Ambulance and Rescue Service Agreement as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Stone and Councilmember King.
Pam King, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Thank you. And the Black Mountain Greenways and Trails Committee Pollinator Garden Proposal.
So this is, Ms. Lutz, would you like to come talk? So this is something that was sent to us by the Greenways and Trails Committee, and I'm not gonna steal her thunder, I'm gonna let her.
All right.
My thunder. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name's Ann Lutz. I'm representing the Black Mountain Trails and Greenways Committee, and we have a proposal for your consideration tonight for renovation of part of the garden strip on Charlotte Street. It's a portion of the Village Greenway. The Village Greenway is behind the primary and elementary schools and gives a safe passage between the two schools. And this particular section runs right behind the Super 8 Motel. This particular section has been very problematic as far as maintaining plantings due to invasive grasses. So what we would like to propose is that we're going to replant this area and make it a pollinator garden, which will reduce the amount of maintenance that's required in the area over the long haul, and it will also provide an educational opportunity through the National Wildlife Federations to the two schools, and we've already had some interest from there to work with them. Our timeline would be to destroy the invasive grasses in June. In July, we would seed hard fescue, and then in fall, we would plant our seeds and perennial plants, pollinator plants for the butterflies. And this would be done by Emily Sampson and the Black Mountain Greenways and Trails Committee volunteers. First, we would mow the area. Emily will apply the Vantage and to kill the grass and reapplication if needed. And it's been used in other town projects, and it has a 12-hour re-entry from application. And we'd recommend that we'll put up a sign that says that we're spraying this little area. It's just so folks know who are walking their dogs by and that kind of thing. And the volunteers will come in after that, remove remaining burdock and other invasives that are not killed by this particular herbicide. And then we'll seed the hard fescue and water it for a couple of weeks. We may need some town water delivery, or we might we'll probably try to talk the motel into letting us borrow some water if we had to, if we are not in a rainy spell. And then the volunteers will plant fall perennials probably in September, around September. We'll coordinate with Public Works regarding the mowing restrictions once the garden is installed. The budget is expected to be under $3,000. The funds will be donated by the Black Mountain Greenways and Trails Committee. And a second phase may be proposed for the remaining section of this little greenway that's close to the creek in 2022. Any questions?
That's great. That area will look, I walk there a lot and use that little section of Greenway for a little
Then
loop.
you know how it's impossible to tame it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough looking spot, but it gets so much sun, and thanks so much for y'all's work for raising the funds, but also just for planning. It's just tremendous. Thank you. Any questions? You can go right ahead.
Well, just one suggestion. I'd really love to see some educational signage up when you get it done so that all the passersby and the children and so on can understand that this isn't just a weeded field. It's serving a really good purpose.
We have a sign up there. It was put up there by Emily a while back that designates it as a pollinator garden, but our pollinator plants got smothered by the invasive grasses. So we'll have that sign, and we can talk about getting another type of signage there to help out with that. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Ann? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the proposed renovation of the Charlotte Street Garden.
So moved.
Great. Thank you, Doug. Councilmember King, I'm going to throw a curveball. How about if we start with Councilmember Patiller
My
to
head's
show that we're ambidextrous, and go the other direction.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
There you go. It worked, didn't it?
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for your work. Item D, under new business, ordinance to create a grant project fund for the American Rescue Plan Act transactions.
So this ordinance, let's see, 021-09, we are still anticipating this money any day. It didn't come today because I had Tammy check, probably would have her checking every day. But we are set to get just short of $2.4 million here in Black Mountain through the American Rescue Plan. What this does, this ordinance, it sets up the fund for us, so when we start expending these funds, they are easy to track and they will all be in one place. So that's all this is.
So to clarify, we don't get it, it comes in two parts, correct?
So yes, so it will come in two equal payments. The first being, I think, 1.195 million, and that's supposed to be any day. The next disbursement, I think, is next year around the same time, as far as I know. And you have to have the monies. 2024 is when they're supposed to be spent, but if you have something in the hopper, I think you have until 2026 to spend it. As long
I think
as
that's
it's
correct.
programmed.
My understanding as well. And for the members of the public here and listening, this is like any grant that you might be familiar with, but it's got guidelines on how the monies are to be spent. And the first, one of the first calls I attended, I can't remember who was speaking, but it was somebody from, I think it was the fellow who used to be Atlanta Sky that is in DC and over COGS, I think, in
Right.
the whole country. But anyway, made the comment that, it's not unheard of for the government to ask for the money back if the grant terms aren't followed, and which is something that Josh noted, I know, and since he would be the responsible party for making sure this is sent out, but of course the town council is at the end of the day responsible. And so it's, the uses of the funds are specified. And so, but we will have, because it comes in two groups, we have a good bit of time to have public input and work through how the second one half will be expended. The first one half, we have two projects that are just pressing on us. We have to do these projects. Fortunately, they fit because it's a stormwater project, our Lake Tomahawk Dam, and secondly, a water line project they're both essential projects. And so we'll move forward with those, and we'll be able to, as soon as the funds come in, Josh can start getting the contracts in place and so forth to get that work done. Council voted on that recently, and we've discussed it one time before in a public meeting. We were all on the same page with that. But with the second one half, we'll have time for some, a little more public input than we were able to have time for on this first one half. So I would entertain a motion from council to adopt ordinance 021-09 as presented.
So
Thank you, Councilmember Patel. Are there any other questions on this before we vote? If not, go right ahead.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Great, thank you very much. We'll move right into our public hearings. We have a few of them tonight, and just for the public's input from the public, most of these, we have held special call meetings, and in case of our comprehensive plan update, not only meetings by us separately, but by the public. So these public hearings may sound a little short and sweet in some cases, but there's been work, lots of work behind. I mean, council has had special meetings on some of these as well. So our first public hearing for text amendments to open space requirements, in major subdivisions, and this is a continuation from the May 10th meeting. And I would entertain a motion from council that we open the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Pateller.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Very good, thank you. Go right ahead, Jessica.
So this, you're right, this is a continuation from our last month's meeting, and this ordinance, just as a reminder, increases the open space requirements for major subdivisions from 5 to 15%. And my understanding is that there were some questions about how that related to our Phase 2 post-construction stormwater ordinance. And the answer is sometimes a little and sometimes not very much. So typically in a major subdivision, the type of stormwater infrastructure that you would be familiar with seeing, you might see a pond, a detention pond. So your open space, no more than half of it can be an open body of water. So that's one way that might occur. But it also often includes underground detainment and conveyance systems. So if you had an area dedicated in green space that was, like a park type setting, it would not prohibit the use of that underwater containment systems and things like that. So it would be pretty uncommon for the Phase 2 stormwater ordinance to place additional requirements on a developer. The open space requirement increase, that the goal was largely to have more intentional green space design as opposed to natural leftovers that can't be developed to suffice. And so we were hoping to push that into a little bit more intentional design.
Any questions by council on that? But it was my concern when we were talking about this in May, and just wanted to make sure we weren't double doing it. Great, thank you so much. So is there any comments from the public?
Unless someone here wants to speak, I don't have any comments for this.
Okay. Hearing none then, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. Go right ahead with the vote.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Very good, thank you. Council, any other questions to Jessica? Any comments?
What counts as a major subdivision?
So when you get beyond 4 parcels.
4 parcels.
Mhm.
And then, do you know where this would put us in the region as far as what other communities are doing as for a percentage?
I think 5% is was more common a few years ago. I think there is a move to increase that in general.
Great.
Also, just from a stormwater perspective, it helps increase the area of natural area that for infiltration purposes. So it does have that additional benefit.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to pass ordinance 021-04.
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Archie?
Archie Patillo, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Great, thank you. So the motion O-21-04 for amendments to open space requirements in major subdivision has passed. And we don't need to do anything with statement of consistency at this point, do we?
It's built into the ordinance you just passed.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, future purposes, the board might want to at least discuss that statement a little bit. As I told you the last meeting, that consistency statement, the law is right now, as long as you find that your ordinance is consistent with your comprehensive plan, then nobody's to question your interpretation. They could easily change when the legislature's done, because then we could be found, somebody came back and sued, and that we had misinterpreted and something you passed did not fit the comprehensive plan. We could be liable for their attorney's fees.
Right.
So the board will have to be a little bit more cognizant of exactly what the comprehensive plan is, how your ordinance fits within it, and it wouldn't hurt to get at least some discussion of it on the public record.
Very good. So we'll try to do that as we move through these things in the future.
Yes.
Make sure we make that part of the public discussion. And so, very good. Thank you. So we're on now to the public hearing to create a stormwater utility ordinance, and I would entertain a motion that we open the public hearing.
So moved.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Patil.
Archie Patillo, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you very much. Go right ahead, Jessica.
So Mayor Harris, this is one of the heftier meetings you referred to earlier. A few weeks ago, we did have a special meeting where we walked through the details of creating a stormwater utility. And thanks to your patience and attention through that lengthy meeting and a record-breaking number of slides from me as a planning director, tonight is a simple summary of facts that led to our need to establish this utility. The town is subject to an NPDES permit, which is a National Pollution Elimination and Discharge Permit, which is extremely detailed, cumbersome to administer, and expensive to implement. And it is unfortunately an unfunded federal mandate. And in early 2020, the town was audited by the state, which does that on behalf of EPA, and we found our stormwaters to be deficit in the needs of our compliance. The town is required by the permit to provide adequate funding for compliance with the permit, and the utility is intended to do that. Tonight, we are not establishing a rate, like you mentioned earlier, but rather just creating the ordinances for the administration of that utility. A stormwater management utility is created to protect, control, regulate use and construction, and to enhance the town's stormwater system and facilities. It's intended to support the implementation of the NPDES permit, which has more than 40 specific items for requirement, ranging from community education and outreach, outfall monitoring, and the maintenance of expansion of our physical stormwater system.
Great, thank you. Any comments from the public?
Yeah, some public comment. Lisa Milton.
Hello, Lisa, we haven't seen you in a while. 14, 16 months?
Yes, it's nice to be back. I got a bit late. Lisa Milton, 406 West State Street. And I have a piece of property that my husband and I purchased in the mid-'80s that is 8 acres, and it has almost a quarter of a mile along the Swananoa River, over on South Blue Ridge Road, essentially from South Blue Ridge Road going all the way down to Bud Hall's junkyard. Over the years, well, when we first purchased that piece of property, there was a young woman one day on the South Blue Ridge Road bridge, and she was taking water samples. So I stopped and asked her, what she was doing. And she worked for the state and was testing river water all over the western part of the state. And she gave me her number and she said, we'll test this. And she said, you can call. And she gave me the number and she said, ask for this number and it will reflect what we find from the river water sample that we've taken. They tested only 2 spots here in Black Mountain on the Swananoa River, the South Blue Ridge Road Bridge and the Blue Ridge Road Bridge. And she said the rest of them are outside the city limits. Those 2, I called in a couple of months, and those 2 tests, she said, were the cleanest water in the state of North Carolina that they tested. The reason being was that there's no industry to the Continental Divide. There are no farm animals that are allowed to the water. We had horses on that piece of property, but they were fenced so they could not get into the river. The fence was about 35 feet back from the river itself. She said those are some of the problems that we find. She said some of the biggest polluters are farm animals, hog farms. Luckily, we don't have hog farms and stuff. In the 30 plus years, 36 years, I guess, that we have owned it, the river is now endangered. There is a tremendous amount of sediment. We have watched erosion that is at a level that it is difficult to deal with. The pollutants that are coming into the river, essentially, it starts at a level of saying there's unpermitted fill that has gone into the floodway and the floodplain. The floodplain is there to allow heavy floods to dissipate. When you fill that floodway, you limit it. You speed up the river, which speeds up erosion. All of the stormwater is routed into the river. That stormwater is full of sediment, salt when they salt the roads, gas, oil, other pollutants, excessive fertilizer. All of that goes into the river. That water is coming off, a lot of times it's coming off of pavement. It is hotter water. It raises the temperature of the river, which aquatic life cannot sustain. Much of the erosion that has gone on has taken large trees out of just the section that I and several neighbors that have walked the river and looked at. It has taken large trees out which shade the river and keep the water cool. When you do those things and raise the temperature, we lose aquatic life to be able to live in there. We lose plant life because some plants need the cool of the water. The 30-foot stream buffer that the town has in the code has not been maintained. Essentially, if you walk the river and you go up through there and you look and estimate 30 feet, there's a tremendous amount of debris in people's yards. And when the water gets up, that debris goes down the river. We have stood on the South Blue Ridge Road Bridge and watched sets of stairs come down the river, bang around under the bridge, head on out, decks, tires, it's the telephone poles. It's things that people collect, but they do not understand that they need to keep it back from the river. That hasn't been addressed. The trees currently that block the river, I've already covered that. There's currently at the Blue Ridge Road Bridge, on the west side of the bridge, there's a dam of trees. I have called, neighbors have called, because when you dam the bridge up, you back that water up on everybody upstream from that. I got a hold of Dan Cordell and said, you know, we need those trees taken out. They're doing nothing but collecting more and more debris, to a point where during one of the most recent floods, the state had to come in and repair the bridge underpinning on one side of the bridge because the water dammed up and it swirled in there. It made an eddy and it just ate it up. Dan Cordell was appointed the floodplain and floodway manager. So I called him and asked, what do we do about getting that done? And he said, I don't know, because he said that job was taken away from him. What it appears at this point is that no one has been watching after the erosion, the degradation of the water, the degradation of the river, people's property losses, and that has gone on, obviously, for 10 years. My first appointment to the planning board came in July of 2015. The first project that came to the board for that meeting was the stormwater project at Tudor Croft. We took a tour over there. We looked at the setting. We looked at how much impervious land was now essentially there that used to basically absorb the water. And we had questions about the size of the pond. Was that adequate, especially considering the slope of the land? We were told it was engineered and it was adequate. That stormwater pond failed, and mud and silt went everywhere. The county came in and addressed that and made them put another stormwater pond in. From this point, I'm assuming that it's functioning, but there's still a lot of land that doesn't have the impervious surface built on it yet. I asked after that about forming a citizens committee. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental design, and we studied things like landscaping, plantings that you can do. I've taken several courses through NC State on stormwater issues, and there's a lot of stormwater issues that can be mitigated long before it ever gets to the river. At the point that we get to now is the town has neglected their duties. The degradation has gone on to a point where the state has said we have to comply, and we should. I feel that from watching the river and the health of the river and how it's deteriorated. But for the town to say, at this point, we're going to make all of the citizens pay. Many of the problems have come from developers who have done their project, they've sold, and they've moved on. And now the taxpayers are going to have to pick up the tab. My thought on that is that when you neglect your job, it isn't fair to continue to make the taxpayers open their wallets and pay for that neglect. The town has money in the bank, and at this point, I think it is only fair to the citizens of Black Mountain that essentially for the next 10 years, the town draw out of that bank account money to fund the utility fund until you basically have equalized or paid for the neglect for the 10 years that have gone on in the prior, as opposed to causing the citizens to have to pay this. There's lots of things that can be done that aren't expensive, that can be implemented, but it takes addressing it. And to simply say that now the citizens are going to have to pay for this, I feel is a burden on people, especially at this point in time with how many property owners have rental properties whose tenants couldn't pay their rent. So everybody is playing a catch-up game. I don't know if some of the CARES money can be designated towards that and in grants towards people who have not been able to collect the rent from their tenants. But I feel that there are funds there that should be allotted to it, and that in the future, the town takes a much more vigilant role in addressing responsibilities. I really appreciate you listening to me, and it's nice to.
Any other comments? Hearing none then, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Stone, and Councilmember Patel.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Jessica?
I know that you had 96 slides last time, but
I did.
just to refresh our memories and to make sure the public is aware, what does the utility money go toward if it's passed? That's a really hard
Sure.
question, and I know that, but
No, I'm happy to explain. The NPDES permit is it's about 15 pages, and it is, there's a goal for like 40 different goals. I think it actually tops out around, it's like 46 or 47. And there is an action item for each one over the next 5 years. And some of those are things that we have been doing, like public education and outreach. We have had workshops for property owners about how to maintain and fortify your property that's on water courses. I send out that PowerPoint and that booklet we had made pretty regularly when people have questions. It's something we've been able to continue to use. But it's also for street sweeping, because that's part of this permit. It's for maintenance and improvement to the actual physical infrastructure that conveys stormwater. I think it's really important to understand that the NPDES permit is largely related to water quality. It is promulgated from the Clean Water Act. So that's where all of this goes back to. Our post-construction stormwater ordinance may be the most strict in the state. Developers like to tell me that. There are developments in town who, in Tudor, Croft is one of them, people are concerned about stormwater, but they are under erosion control and sedimentation by the county. Under the previous stormwater ordinance that was built under, their post-construction means when you are done. That's when those requirements become enforceable. I closed that, and Lisa is certainly right. The river is on it's impaired surface water. I think Manager Harold and I have a goal seeing that come off that list. But one thing that the utility will also pay for is a staff person to get out there and find these things, help enforce some of these rules. Also doing outfall inspections to see, if it hasn't rained in 3 days and you go and check a major outfall and something's coming out of it, you've got to figure out what it is and where it's coming from. And that is a labor-intensive, equipment-intensive process. So it's a lot.
so who's doing the work right now? I remember you talking about that at our workshop, and it's sort of interspersed amongst several departments.
It is, and it will continue to be, because stormwater really relates to everyone. Different buildings are operating under different types of permits, and we all have to comply. So part of that is pavement management. That's not just roads, but that's also our parking lots. That when we clean things down at Public Works, that we're not dumping it into a storm drain, that it's going to a sanitary sewer or appropriate landfill sort of situations. The oil water separator that we manage. So there's the administrative side, and there are things going on in the field in Public Works. There are trainings that I sent out to all department heads, so all staff can help be eyes and ears when we see things in the community. If bubbles are in a ditch, something's not right. Somebody should call someone. It is true that Dan was the floodplain administrator, and the only thing that changed in that, it was stormwater review of permits, in which I brought in a consulting engineer to review to make sure that these very complicated civil plans were compliant with our post-construction ordinance. And we have a great relationship with a consulting engineer in City of who lives in Asheville, who does that for us.
Great. Any other questions?
I remember there were several multi-million-dollar projects, infrastructure projects
Oh, yes.
that we'll need to undertake. soon. But then there were also ongoing costs. You estimated roughly about $500,000 a year. Is that right?
For total, including a capital set aside of about $100,000.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 0-21-06 as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Stone. Councilmember Patillo.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you very much. And now, public hearing to create a stormwater utility fund. Now that we've passed the ordinance, we need to create a fund for those, to operate the functioning ordinance. So I would entertain a motion that we go we open the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Raines and Councilmember Patillo.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you, Jessica.
So this is the associated fund. It is a dedicated fund, and this is the preferred way in many ways to manage that stormwater revenue because it is dedicated and protected to the service of the utility. The ordinance describes administration of the utility fees, which are organized in tiers based on intensity of use. And these are things we may explore more nuanced types of fee structures in the future, but we're going to start off with flat tiers. Tier 1 being minimal impact, such as residential use. Tier 2 would be your moderate impact, which are general non-residential business. Think about a bank or a pharmacy sort of thing. Tier 3 are undeveloped, which there would be, we propose no fees would be associated with in our proposal. Tier 4 are exempt. Those would be anything government owned, state, federal, or local. And Tier 5 is heavy, and that gets into your larger strip development and industrial type uses. It also sets forth a development credit system to begin in 2024. Those are very labor intensive, and we need some data on the backside to figure out how to size that credit system in the future. It also includes an appeals process. We've done the best that we can with the available data to sort every single parcel in town into these categories. We used zoning data, tax data, GIS aerial, and drive-by. We will be wrong on many of these. There's just no way to get that right. But every statement will include an appeals direction. If you at your house get an Ingalls bill, I want to know and to fix it. So everybody will get that. And citizens we want the ability to correct those records and move forward in the future. It will be more streamlined. It would be the ordinance says it will be regularly scheduled intervals and be predictable. And so we are notably looking at bills that will be issued once a year as a standalone bill and run on a schedule similar to property taxes. We do not know the exact timeline right now. It's going to see how long it takes to get data entered in from my Excel into the software and then run. But probably 6 to 8 weeks it would turn around the first time.
Thank you. Thank you. Any members of the public wish to make a comment? Josh?
I don't have any comments from anybody specifically.
Anyone present? Care to make any comments? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion that we close the public hearing.
So,
Great, and go right ahead with the vote. Art.
aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. Any questions for Jessica or Josh, council members? And hearing none,
Well, Mr. Mayor, if we could do one thing, Jessica, if you wouldn't mind, since this is a lot for everyone, could you just summarize what we've done tonight for everyone once again?
Yes. This-
Basically, we've laid out the outline of how we're going to administer this going forward.
Yes.
And we're taking the baby steps of creating this dedicated funding source that will
Yes.
alleviate a pressing issue in this community.
Yes. I think in our meeting, we talked about the risks to the city for the with fees and fines associated with lack of compliance. But these two ordinances, they just set up the structure for setting it forth and having dedicated purpose.
Absolutely.
One thing that I'm not, the folks who are hearing this for the first time, perhaps, it is important that public understands that we really had no option here. Fairly straightforward, we really had no option. Also, every municipality in Buncombe County fits a similar category as the town of Black Mountain, and had to take the same steps. You just have to do it. You don't really have a choice. It's just being mandated from above.
It is, and
Not a bad thing, but it's being mandated from above. But the only other thing I would add is that we're doing a good bit.
oh yes,
Jamie's crew in particular. It's just it's mixed in with our general fund. Some of those things will end up
Yes.
moving, and some of those associated revenues, this really goes to maybe one of the public comments earlier, will make their way, because it's truly addressing the purposes of our new ordinance. So we've got some accounting work to do, I guess, to get that straightened out. But it's not as if we're not expending general fund monies on this at the present time.
that's absolutely true. And there are, I think the depth and the breadth of the requirements of this permit are very difficult to wrap your head around. I mean, there are some items that cost $2,000 to have a couple workshops a year and work with the public. There are action items on there that one of them costs $100,000, and that's, asset mapping and management. And that doesn't even get into infrastructure activities, which are, upwards of $15 million over a period of time.
Right.
And if I can add, and Jamie brought this point up at our special call meeting, these projects are not something that we can approach piecemeal because of just the volume of water that they're dealing with and the pressures they put on the existing system.
Mhm.
So when we undertake these are going to be large undertakings, and they're going to be things that are difficult to see visually from where we are. But I do think that this is a very good first step in addressing something that we've heard about over and over again.
And if there is a feeling of something like sneaking up on us, I mean, this is an opportunity to blame the state. We can take the opportunity
Why
where
not?
it's given.
Sure.
North Carolina did not audit thoroughly for many
Correct.
years, and EPA came down to North Carolina and said, you've got 4 or 5 years, and all your MS4s are going to be audited and up to speed. So my listserv is any inclination. Everybody is going through what we're going through.
Right.
Existing stormwater utilities are upping their rates upwards of 20% across the state, because the cost of the maintenance is just so outrageous. And the implementation starting up, it's no small task.
Another hard question that you just say, I can't do it, you can't, but it's just, if somebody owned a $250,000 house, how much do you think in an annual fee would this turn into?
The proposed was $6 a month.
$6 a month. So I just
Yeah,
wanted to put it in
$72.
perspective for people that don't have a clue what are we talking about here,
Mhm.
So,
That's what we discussed.
And that'll be in the budget ordinance.
It is, it's in our schedule fees.
Right. Any other questions? And those are good ones, thank you. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion that we adopt, adopt a motion to create a stormwater utility fund that is 02108.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Stone. And I'm gonna go back. I'm batting right-handed now, and I'm gonna go to Councilmember King.
Pam King, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Arts Patrilla, aye.
Thank you. All right, so our next public hearing would be for our update of our comprehensive plan, which is now, we're naming it Elevate Black Mountain. So I would entertain a motion that we open the public hearing.
So moved. Sorry. So
Thank you. I appreciate that, council member. And so, Councilmember King.
Pam King, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Okay, aye. Ernest Petrella, aye.
Great.
I have the pleasure of introducing our consultant, Nate Baker, who led the charge for this. We've convened many times in the public and planning board and with this body to discuss Elevate Black Mountain. I think it's something we can all be really proud of. I think it's very exciting. And I'm going to let Nate close us out.
Great, thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's good to be with you here in person this time. Last month I was up on the screen. It's much more fun to be here. So as your planning director noted, this is the public hearing for the comprehensive plan. It's called Elevate Black Mountain. Over the past year and a half, we have been working, we as in community, staff, stakeholders, everyone in Black Mountain, myself working with Clarion Associates and Chipley, Sealy Chipley with Chipley Consulting out of Asheville, have been working together to develop the comprehensive plan, which is both a process, a robust public engagement process, as well as the resulting document. So I gave you a presentation last month. This month, I'm giving you the same presentation, but slimmed down, because I'm sure that there are folks who are tuning in for the first time. So I just want to start again with what exactly a comprehensive plan is. And yes, we are required to have a comprehensive plan in the state of North Carolina if we want to have zoning. Most people want to have zoning. But it's also just a very important document for two reasons, as I mentioned earlier. The process and the document itself. So the document itself is the highest level policy document in a local government or in the community. So it's a guide and a blueprint for the town, for capital investments, for programs, for other policy initiatives. And it's also a compass. So it's a compass to guide future land development decisions. So developer comes in, where do you turn to think about whether the development should be approved or not, where it should go, where it's appropriate, what kind of development is appropriate. The comprehensive plan will have that kind of information for you. It's really answering three key questions. Where are we as a community? Where are we going? And how do we get there? So Elevate Black Mountain is not just coming out of nowhere. It is also building off of your current comprehensive plan from 2014. So importantly, this is a community plan. There are strategic plans that are created and built for elected officials. This is the community plan. So this is a long-range plan. It's citizen-driven. It's built off of a robust process, and resident input really forms the foundation of the plan. We began in what feels like last year, 2019, in November of 2019 with the Phase 1 research and analysis. This is where we kicked things off. We held stakeholder meetings. We assessed existing conditions in a data-based, data-driven way. Phase 2 was the plan, vision, and goals. This was the phase that was very, very heavy on public engagement, with the workshops for our future as the first major touch point, and then the action for our future as the second major touch point. Phase 3 is where we actually worked on drafting the plan and had the third major public engagement touch point, which was unveil and test the plan. And we're now nearing the end of Phase 4 with the public hearings for the comprehensive plan. And just to hit on what exactly the three touch points were, the workshops for our future laid the foundation for developing the vision, developing the goals, action for our future, developing the policies and the implementation actions. And then unveil and test the plan was the opportunity for the community to weigh in on what had been put together. The workshops for our future were a lot of fun, starting in January of 2020, and Sealy Chipley was here, held that meeting at the Church of God. Had a lot of different activities, a lot of different in-person activities. There were handouts, there were maps, there were a variety of different ways that the community was able to provide ideas for what the vision and goals should be for the long-range plan. And here's some more images. We also held a second in-person meeting at Meadowbrook Baptist with the exact same activities, so folks could provide input in that way. And importantly, for that phase and for all the phases, we also had an online component. So the exact same questions that were asked in person were also asked online. If people were not able to attend the meeting, people provided input through snail mail, through phone calls, through emails. There were handouts, there were mail outs. So there were a variety of different ways to engage in the process. And then there was the action for our future. And this is after we were feeling the impacts of COVID-19. It was conducted entirely online. There were also handouts and other ways for people who didn't have access to the internet to be able to participate. Over here on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see what some of the questions we were asking were: how well are we reflecting the work that was done in the first round of engagement? And then we held 2 events online and had some pretty robust conversations, breakout groups in the online functionality, and we posted everything online so that you can take a look at what we did there. So at the end, the workshops for our future, there were about 200 participants. Action for our future, we had about 110, and even made it into the front page of the Asheville Citizen Times. What came out of those? There were a variety of themes that we nailed down. First, protection of open space, environmental sustainability, the desire to replicate the downtown character and downtown pattern, the importance of addressing housing affordability and cost of living, parks and community spaces, transportation options, supporting local businesses, and bolstering opportunities, having more opportunities for citizen involvement, citizen engagement. Those consistent themes were tied directly into the creation of the policy framework, policy chapters. There are 5 policy chapters in the plan. They are walkable and livable, green and resilient, vibrant economy, connected and accessible, and civic engagement. And for each of those 5 policy chapters, there is a vision, there are goals, and there are policy actions that were completely built off of the public input that was provided. Here is a screenshot of the table of contents from the plan with the 5 policy chapters. In the last month's meeting, I went through all of the goals in each of those chapters. I'm not going to do that today, but I did want to point out just that in addition to the policy chapters, there's also the chapter that has the future land use map, provides long-range guidance on land use. Each one of the colors that you see corresponds with a page that has more in-depth guidance, primary uses, secondary uses, desired characteristics, etc. And then the most robust chapter is the implementation matrix. And this is really where you have the proactive strategies. In this case, we have about 3 to 6 proactive strategies for each of the topic areas, each of the 5 topic areas. We have the responsible department, the time horizon, the status. I think at the last meeting it was pointed out, a lot of these are listed as very high priority. And that's what's going to be thought about over the coming months, over the coming years. That's where elected officials weigh in. What is the highest priority here? And then as far as recent updates, the community has provided input on the plan. We incorporated some of their edits. We heard a lot of support for the plan. A lot of people who are interested in getting things going and what's taking so long, let's move forward. We also incorporated edits into the public draft from the planning board. The planning board recommended approval, and then you all heard it last month. And clearly we're reading very closely and caught something about impervious surface. So we made a few minor edits to the plan, which is what is before you today. And so that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments?
I do have one that I'll read here. This is Charlotte McRaney. These 2 comments were provided to the planning staff, but were not incorporated into the current draft of the plan that's on the website, so I'm providing them again to the town council for their consideration. Number 1, in the implementation matrix, item A 2.5, which deals with the housing plan, affordable/workforce housing is marked only as a medium priority. In my opinion, this should be a high priority, and if council members and town staff monitor discussions on local neighborhood social media, such as Black Mountain Exchange, you would see how big a concern this is to longtime town residents and many of the people who work here. New development in this town is generally priced at more than $300,000 for a 1,500 square foot home, well outside the affordable range for many working families in this area, and I'm sure that that dollar amount has increased with the increased construction costs over the past year. Past town councils have never made the issue of housing for the town workers a priority. Perhaps in this plan, the town council could make it a priority. Number 2, in the land use section of the document, your description of the type of permitted buildings in 2 categories, institutional campus and complete neighborhoods, mention 4 stories and several other mention 3 stories. This disturbs me. For example, I live at Givens Highland Farms, and one of the things I love is that they are limited to 2 stories, as referenced by the executive director in his talks about the master plan, in their plans for renovations of the buildings on campus, so we won't be seeing all tall apartment buildings blocking views of the beautiful mountains. I sincerely hope that any changes to zoning requirements you might contemplate will not change the current building heights in the place in Black Mountain city limits, as taller buildings will have a major impact on the look and feel of town. That's it.
Great, thank you. Any members here in the, members of the public here in the room care to make comment? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion that we close the public hearing.
So moved.
Great, thank you. And you can start the voting,
Pam
Councilman.
King, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Thank you. Any questions? It is timely to consider our town attorney's comments earlier about our consistency language and consistency with the plan, and just that these plans are important, and we appreciate, Jessica, your work on it, your work of your firm, your work, and I hope you haven't grown tired of the town of Black Mountain over the past year. I know you've met a lot of folks, so we appreciate your work. Hearing none, I believe, are we ready to take a vote?
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to approve Elevate Black Mountain as presented.
Thank you, Ryan. Councilmember King, you can start the voting.
Pam King, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. Our next public hearing and our last one for tonight is a public hearing for ordinance 02105 for amendments to the land use code to comply with chapter 160D, and I'd entertain a vote to open the public hearing. Thank you, and Alderman Patillo, would you start the voting, please?
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. Ms. Starnes, our 160D person.
Council. So I won't run through the whole PowerPoint presentation that I gave last time. That was a lot of information. As you know, we are updating our town land use code to comply with the rewritten statutes, chapter 160D, which updated and consolidated the authority for local governments, both municipal and county governments, to regulate land use. So the updated code the ordinance that you have updates our land use code in several ways. There are lots of updates to the language of the ordinance, making sure that our terminology is consistent with the statutes. There are updates to the permitted uses table. We have done away with conditional use permits, which are no longer allowed by statute, consolidating all of those into the chapter on special use permits. And in the end of my last presentation, made some recommendations to you about possibly considering more comprehensive updates to the land use code. As we went through those, Jessica, planning director, and I worked very closely together to try to get as the language as consistent and simplified as we could. But the underlying code is about 20 years old or more. And anything, I think that taking a broader look at updating it really would be useful for folks who want to develop, useful for citizens who want to know how to use their lands here, and useful for town staff, making it easier for them to administer the regulations. But broadly speaking, all of the changes are, with a few exceptions, are required for compliance with the state statute.
Great, thank you. Any comments from the public? Great, hearing none, entertain a motion to close public hearing. Great, and you please start the vote. if you would.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you. Any questions for Attorney Starnes? I think you wore us out at our workshop.
Cold bench, always know when to stop going.
No, it was good. It was good. The workshop was good, and actually that explanation is very good too. And if you had, this may not be a fair question, but if you had, for the public who's kind of interested, and a lot of these are just, it's a lot of detail that's really just mandated by the statute. But if you had sort of addressed this topic in my discussions with Josh, on it, about it, trying to understand a more simplistic, which is my best way of trying to deal with things, or my attempts anyway. What would be your take on the general, what does 160D, how does it make a difference in the town of Black Mountain for somebody, applying for a permit now versus, under 160D versus, prior to 160D?
I think really the goal of, and there were a lot of attorneys who worked on this project with members of the legislature for a number of years, was to avoid having to have kind of octopus fingers where you go through the different books of the statute and you flag the different spots where it refers back to another chapter somewhere else. And for a developer who might be working in several different counties or municipalities where the regulatory framework was different for county governments than it was for municipal governments. So there were some things that counties could do that municipal governments couldn't, and vice versa. And so really just consolidating and streamlining, making sure that we're using the same terminology throughout the state when we talk about the types of permits. And really the conditional zoning, making it explicit what is allowed and not allowed. There's been some confusing case law. And so I think overall, the goal was to put it all in one spot so that it's easy to refer back to and know what you can and can't do. And I think it gives the town actually a really good framework for the type of revised land use code that you want to write, because you can follow a similar structure to the statute and really make it easy for folks to refer back and see what they can do and what they can't do with their land when they're thinking about how best to use it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion that we adopt ordinance 021-05. Oops, how about 021-05 for amendments to the land use code to comply with chapter 160D.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Hay. And we'll, Councilmember Patil, we'll start with you.
Mark Spatilla, aye.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ann. I appreciate it very much. So we are finished with our public hearings. I was trying my best how to figure out to work in Councilmember Raines some way, but standing in the middle, I didn't have the emotional strength to get there, Just have to start at one end or the other. Anything from you, Mr. Sneed?
Just up or a statute that's out there that would make a single-family dwelling be as much as a quadruplex. That's still in committee and hasn't been moving forward. I don't know how it will move forward. Anna knows more about how they make the sausage than I do. But at the moment, nothing's happening on that bill. But that would be the one that would change the definition of a single-family residence and really increase the potential density in local government.
Anything from you?
Sure, a couple things. Just a reminder that we will be closed here on Monday, July the 5th, in observance of July 4th, which falls on a Sunday. And then a reminder for council and the public, our public hearing on the budget is next Monday on June 21st.
Great. Thank you. And we do not have a meeting this Thursday at 8:30.
No, sir.
You good?
I don't know what I'll do.
Just leave that part of your schedule
I'll figure
penciled
out
in.
something.
Thank you. And I believe the town manager has requested that we go into executive session to discuss personnel matters, but I just don't have that general statute memorized.
143-318.116.
Very good. I have a motion to go into closed session under that.
So moved.
Yep, thank you very much. Dr. Patil.
Doug Hay, aye.
Tim Raines, aye.
Ryan Stone, aye.
Pam King, aye.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.